What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about Warzone 2. Now at this point, we don't really have any confirmed information about Warzone 2. All we really know is a full sequel to Warzone as a separate game is coming at some point alongside the next Call of Duty game. We don't know exactly when it's going to be launching, or even a good indication of when it's going to be launching or anything, and we know no details about the gameplay itself. But in today's video, I did want to talk about one of my biggest hopes for Warzone 2. And this is, I really hope we see a lot more separation between multiplayer and Warzone. As I'm sure many of you guys know at this point, I prefer multiplayer Call of Duty. I had a ton of fun with Warzone for the first, I would say 8 to 10 months of the game's life cycle, and then after that, it always just sort of felt stale to me. Now, I still played it for quite some time after that throughout Cold War's life cycle, but it did eventually get to the point for me where I just no longer was enjoying myself playing the game, and therefore I don't play it anymore, or extremely rarely. I might hop on once every 2 months or so just to check in to see how it's doing, but I've lost interest entirely in Warzone, and my primary focus is and always has been Call of Duty multiplayer. That's what I personally care about the most. I understand there's plenty of people out there that love Warzone, they care about Warzone, and they want Warzone to succeed, and I do agree with those people entirely. I want both sides of the equation to succeed and thrive on their own. And I have felt many times throughout the past 3 years of Call of Duty since Warzone launched, I've often felt that multiplayer and Warzone were working against each other due to the really heavily forced integration between the two. Now, this was most evident with Modern Warfare 2019 since they were so heavily tied together. In fact, they're still on the same client to this day. But we even saw this with various elements with Cold War as well as Vanguard, where I often felt like they made decisions in the multiplayer side of things, not necessarily because it's the best thing for multiplayer, but because they wanted it to also work in Warzone and they wanted to have some parity between both modes. And I could say the same thing about many of the elements in Warzone as well, where I feel like some things were being held back because they needed to maintain that parity with multiplayer. Now, at the same time, obviously they do want to have some level of parity between the multiplayer side of things and the Warzone side of things, because Warzone is the free-to-play experience, and the multiplayer is the experience that you pay full price for. And obviously, they want to try to use their free-to-play product to market the paid product, and they want to encourage Warzone players to buy the regular Call of Duty multiplayer. So of course, it is important to have some things in common and some things that work together across both modes. But let's go over the list of elements that I really hope will be separated between multiplayer and Warzone going forward with Warzone 2. The first thing is perk and class structure. Now, we don't even know exactly how they're going to handle classes in Warzone 2, or if we're even going to have create a class or what they're going to do with that. But assuming they do stick to having set class setups where you choose your perks and your equipment and your primary and secondary weapon, I'd really like this to be entirely separate from multiplayer. Now, when Warzone first launched, we did have the same perk structure as Modern Warfare's multiplayer, but they did adjust several of the perks so they had different behaviors in Warzone, because many of the perks that were applicable in multiplayer would make zero sense with how Warzone plays. So it was nice to see that they at least tried to make things work in Warzone, but in many cases it really felt forced, like they were limited by the perk structure that we had for Modern Warfare's multiplayer, and they had to just sort of make that work for Warzone rather than designing it from the ground up to be just made for Warzone specifically, and then have the multiplayer side handled entirely separately. Like, I honestly wouldn't care if we had totally different perks in Warzone compared to multiplayer, with different names, different behaviors, different structure between the tiers. I think by separating that, you give a lot more freedom on both sides of things, so they're no longer fighting against each other, and you're not having to make something work in one mode because it has to be there for the other mode. And that segues into the next thing that I hope is entirely separate for Warzone and multiplayer going forward. I really hope there's an entirely different client for Warzone. Don't include it as if it's a side mode for the Call of Duty game, where you have to boot up Modern Warfare 2022 just to play Warzone. Instead, we should have Modern Warfare 2022 as one game and Warzone 2 as a completely separate game. By keeping these separate, you're no longer holding back one mode in exchange for the other mode, or if you make changes to one mode, it doesn't introduce bugs in the other side of things, like we've seen with Modern Warfare 2019. Several months back, there was a big Warzone update, that just broke Modern Warfare's multiplayer for a lot of people, where they literally couldn't play multiplayer because of this update that was made specifically for Warzone. Additionally, just when it comes to the user experience as well and big downloads, if somebody only wants to play multiplayer, they shouldn't have to download and install a massive update that only affects Warzone. Also, by keeping the clients completely separate, I believe this also gives them a lot more freedom to tune things specifically for Warzone without impacting the multiplayer side of things, and it opens up more freedom to do so. So if they wanted to change up the movement mechanics in Warzone, for instance, they could do so without affecting the movement mechanics in the multiplayer side of things. Additionally, another thing I hope they keep completely separate between Warzone and multiplayer in the future is weapon balance. And this is something they eventually did transition to with Warzone, where initially when Warzone launched, most, if not all, of the weapon balance was literally copied and pasted from Modern Warfare's multiplayer. But over time, they did start to make separate updates where they would change something in the Warzone side of things that wouldn't affect multiplayer. And that continued over the years as well. So when you compare a Vanguard gun in multiplayer versus Warzone, they often perform entirely different. Like, they have a totally different recoil pattern. It doesn't feel like the same gun. And I think that's totally fine, and that's how it should be. The engagements that you get into in Warzone are entirely different from the engagements you'll experience in multiplayer, and the weapon balance should obviously reflect that. Additionally, another thing I'd love to see separated between these two, and this one might be a little bit on the controversial side, and I could understand if people disagree with this, I would prefer to keep the player leveling entirely separate between multiplayer and Warzone. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about weapon leveling or battle pass progression here, I'm just talking about the player level itself. Over the past 3 years, we've had a unified player progression system. And I gotta be honest, I don't like this at all. I prefer the older systems where when you're leveling up in multiplayer, whether it's a traditional prestige system or not, that level never goes away. It doesn't reset with the seasons. It doesn't reset the next time a new Call of Duty launches. That level carries through with that Call of Duty game forever on your account. And I really missed that because it gave you that sort of long-term progression that would never be taken away from you. Now, obviously, this one depends very heavily on what sort of progression system they're even going to be using this year with Call of Duty. It might be something entirely different that we've never seen before, and it might make this minor complaint that I have completely irrelevant. But in either case, I did want to state what I'd like to see. One thing that I've really been missing from Call of Duty recently is that long-term level that never gets reset, and it sticks with that Call of Duty game forever. And if something like that were to return, I'd hope that the Warzone leveling was just entirely different when it comes to that. Now, having said all of that, I do feel there's a handful of things that should remain in common between Warzone and the current multiplayer title. Because, like I said, there should be some degree of parity here, and obviously they want to use their free-to-play title to market their premium title. So some of the things that should be in common, the first one, obviously the weapons as well as the attachments that you have in the current Call of Duty game, that should be added into Warzone as well. And with that, I do feel your weapon leveling should carry over across multiple titles. So if you level up a gun in multiplayer, it should be leveled up in Warzone as well. And that's obviously one of the big things they use as a selling point for the premium Call of Duty for those Warzone players out there. They make it so it's very attractive to want to buy the premium title of Call of Duty, even if it's just so you can level up your weapons more efficiently to use in Warzone. Same thing goes with all of your cosmetic items. So all of your character skins, your weapon blueprints, all of the charms and stickers, whatever all those cosmetic things are, they should all carry over across both titles as well. That way you can also have a unified battle pass system, which again, that should also be unified. That's something that I really like that they've done over the past 3 years with the unification of everything. Doesn't matter which one of the Call of Duty games you're playing over the past 3 years, you're working toward the same battle pass, and I think that works very well for a battle pass system. And honestly, that's pretty much it when it comes to what I feel should be unified between Warzone and the premium Call of Duty game. By keeping everything else separate, I feel that would give them so much more freedom to make the appropriate changes for the appropriate mode without having any negative impact on the other side. So if you want to have a completely different movement mechanic in Warzone compared to multiplayer because it works well in a battle royale but it doesn't work well in multiplayer, then by all means, make that change. And the same thing goes in reverse. If there's something that works really well in multiplayer but doesn't really have a place in battle royale, don't try to force it into the battle royale, just don't include it at all. When it comes to this next generation of Call of Duty titles with Warzone 2 playing alongside it, I'd really like to see that very clear separation between multiplayer and Battle Royale, especially when it comes to any element that has an impact on gameplay. In doing so, I feel that would allow them to make the best multiplayer experience possible, as well as the best Battle Royale experience possible, and each of them can stand entirely on their own while simply sharing some elements of progression and all of your cosmetics. Now, of course, this is where I want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What do you think about keeping multiplayer and Battle Royale almost entirely separate going forward, and essentially just have them share weapons, cosmetics, and some of the progression when it comes to like your weapon leveling as well as your battle pass progression? Do you think this would be a good idea overall for both sides, or do you think this would be a bad idea? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.